right. Now we are here today with Troy Wong, the Chief Financial Officer and founder of Neptune Dash. How's it going, Troy?
Great, Joel. How are you?
I'm pretty good. I'm trying to obviously doing a better job than most in keeping my cool in this kind of crazy market. What do you make of all this action lately?
Well, I've been in the cryptocurrency since 2013, and the benefit of being involved in cryptocurrencies a little bit longer than the last 2 months, which is the last sort of new wave of users that has joined, become accustomed to this type of volatility, and you understand this idea of cryptocurrencies being of a currency, but also the adoption of a technology as well. And so generally, what we see with these types of adoption curves, you do see numerous boom and bust cycles off of the previous cycle being higher than the last peak, right? And so you want to sort of see this upward trend. So you sort of see like this massive adoption and increase in price, and then it'll come back down. But ideally, the trough of that cycle, in the last peak of the last cycle. And with respect to Dash and the cryptocurrency market cap in general, we've seen the Dash price go from I think it was $250 all the way up to $1,600, and now we're trading at about $650 US. Absent that type of massive bull run up 1,600 US, anyone would be happy with a $250 move to $650.
Yes, of course. Now, how easy is this to communicate to investors? First off, explain a little bit about what Neptune Dash actually does, both back end and then front end.
Great. So Neptune Dash Technologies Corp. We trade under a public listing on the Toronto Stock Exchange, TSX Venture Exchange. And what we do is we own, operate, construct nodes are a critical component of the Dash blockchain, which involves having two components, both a hardware and cryptocurrency component. Component is effectively a server, which processes transactions on the Dash blockchain. Each masternode is paired with exactly 1,000 Dash cryptocurrency tokens, allow the Dash blockchain to basically execute advanced functionality on the Dash blockchain network. We are basically in the business of acquiring Dash currency as well as operating these servers and linking the two service to the Dash blockchain. Receiving in response to providing that payment to the Dash blockchain as owning and operating masternodes, we are provided with a revenue generating opportunity which yields about 1.8 Dash every 7 to 8 days.
Yeah. So when you have these investors that decide to, they decide they're going to buy some Neptune Dash shares, that seems like an interesting future-looking blockchain-based corporation. And then the cryptocurrency markets go tank about 50% over like half a week. Are they also going to be faced with the sticker shock of Neptune Dash shares going way down, way up, riding the crazy waves of the crypto markets?
So there's a couple things. Our investors are largely institutional who are long-term buy and hold. And when we sat down with each one of our investors, like the idea of having both the cryptocurrency exposure as well as the revenue generating opportunity exposure as well, right? So that's the sort of like the key here to our business, is that like we provide an opportunity for an investor to own currency and have that exposure in the cryptocurrency marketplace, as well as earn more cryptocurrency as a result of having this server hardware component of our business. I mean, that's sort of like a key, real value proposition that we pride ourselves at Neptune Dash. In response to your second question with respect to how we anticipate the stock price to trade on our debut, like we really have no idea sort of what we'll trade at. We're very hopeful. We think that listing on the Canadian exchange, a great exchange for us to list on, largely because Canada is actually building itself out to be a blockchain investment hub. Hive, blockchain technologies, a very, very prominent sort of cryptocurrency miner that's with Genesis mining in Iceland. They've done really well on the TSXV. We see numerous other blockchain companies seeking listings on the TSXV. Actually came out and partnered with GMP, a very prominent Canadian investment bank, to raise 250 million Canadian dollars, also on the TSXV exchange, to start the world's first global cryptocurrency bank. So I think it's really interesting that global investors now are looking to Canadian capital markets to list and invest in.
Yeah. So when you're seeing all this institutional investment, right? You're seeing all this rush into the space, and a lot of it is going toward, I mean, the cryptocurrency markets are very emerging and volatile still.
Yep.
And you see all this being thrown into, well, put all the eggs in one particular digital cash basket, in this case, of running the Dash network. And then you see the markets being so volatile and so emerging. And does that add any kind of pause for the average investor on, will this all evaporate tomorrow? Is it wise to throw so much into basically just Dash in a very emerging market? Is there something that gives a little bit more long-term confidence in the viability of the project?
Well, I mean, myself and my co-founder, Cale Moody, started a private equity group called Neptune Asset Group, formed an unbiased analysis of all the cryptocurrency chain tokens that were in this space at the time. Really sold us on Dash was that we have this concept of masternodes where we could basically earn income as well as own currency. That it was worth the risk of owning, one or starting a public company. Was focused on a central currency, which is Dash, revenue generating opportunity, and so it made it worth it for us. The other issue was we spent a lot of time sort of analyzing Dash viable blockchain, and we liked everything that we saw and learned about it. Right, so we liked the fact it has sort of like a balanced stakeholder. A balanced stakeholder system whereby miners are paid a certain component of the block reward, masternodes are paid a certain component of the block reward, and the Dash DAO treasury block reward as well. Right? We think it's very, very important that a portion of block reward goes immediately back directly towards development activities of a specific blockchain. You have huge network effect associated with an increase in the token price that can then be turned around and actually spent towards marketing promotions, more importantly, development of the ecosystem that's going to make that blockchain scale globally, right? The other thing that we liked about Dash was the DAO, right? The decentralized autonomous organization. That you have a organization that is nimble, that can be voted in and out at any given time by the masternode holders, that's very clear, that's very transparent, and always sort of innovating and advancing in a very and systemic and targeted sort of surgical way is really, really important for a blockchain to grow and flourish, as well as the governance structure that the DAO can basically be, or individuals of the DAO can be voted in and out at any given time. Other blockchains that are in the marketplace right now, they sort of have foundations, and I actually have no idea what the governance structure of how those foundations. So yes, there are other sort of governance models out there on blockchains. Do the token holders actually have a say? Those foundations are governed. We don't have a lot of confidence in that, and so we thought that Dash had a really pioneering and interesting and innovative model that would be well received by capital markets.
Yeah, that's an interesting point about that actual token holders have an opportunity to have a say in how the entire system is run. Basically, investors have a say in what happens to their investment, not just where they place it. Now that of course brings back to the elephant in the room question that I think you kind of already previously answered a little bit, but about about Neptune Dash's voting. So if from what I understood, are not currently plans to use these masternodes to vote. Now, how does that sort of square with the admiration of Dash's stakeholder voting model while choosing not to actively participate in that?
So ourselves at Neptune Dash, to my knowledge, we're the first Dash pure play masternode company, and we're very aware of this idea of centralization, similar to Bitcoin has a mining centralization problem in China right now. It's sort of all over the headlines, and the community is very, very aware of it, right? For Bitcoin, you have like miner location centralization or company centralization. You have mining chip centralization potentially as well. Like a huge risk that's constantly talked about Bitcoin community. So for us, we want to start a Dash masternode company, but we want to do so in a way that's in keeping with as much as possible, right? As well as in keeping with like promoting the Dash community and the Dash brand and the Dash user base. And so as a board of directors, we've sort of collected together and sort of analyzed whether or not we should be actively voting on treasury proposals. Actually, have never voted on a single treasury proposal, and we've decided to remain independent. And our policy going forward basically engage the Dash community and only engage in those proposals and vote on those proposals that we think that we really strongly believe in. We actively engage the Dash community for feedback on what they think that we should do.
Yeah, interesting. So obviously, this might end up being a situation where this sort of voting agnosticism turns into a situation of there might be some kind of major proposal that's going through that could make or break the network. Of course, I'm kind of skeptical of that very theoretical thing I just posited, because obviously it's a large and thriving network and no one proposal should probably make too much of a difference. But let's say there's a situation where someone just decided to say something like something that would jeopardize your entire business model, and then you had the power to throw, say, 20, 40, 60 nodes votes to sync that and make sure your investor's investment is secure in the long term. Is that, and I guess it's barely even a question. I mean, naturally you'd want to vote in that situation, right?
Well, remember that we actually hold a significant amount of tokens, right? And so, this idea that like we're going to like step back and ask yourself, what would be our business? Are we in the business of basically just earning a yield and generating revenue from our master nodes, that portion of the business? Or are we sort of like in the business of just holding on to Dash tokens and receive an upside based on our inventory of tokens that we own? And I think that it's challenging and difficult to sort of throw out like scenarios of like what would you do in this situation or that situation. what I would comment on is saying that, like, we reviewed in detail Evan Duffield's scaling roadmap and noted that, like, Dash masternodes are a core piece to how Dash as a blockchain plans to scale up to 50 million users, over the next several years. It's our intention to stay true to that commitment, to upgrade sort of our hardware requirements for Dash masternodes in order to meet those scaling requirements, scaling requirements, and also sort of like, if Dash can continue to scale in an economic way, that would result in an appreciation of the tokens. Therefore, our stock price would go up. Our shareholders would receive, a really great return on that.
Yeah, as far as you're aware, currently, are there many other companies that do similar things where, as from an investor standpoint, whereas you get an institutional investor that just gets to buy shares in a stock exchange on the future of a cryptocurrency ecosystem? Is that kind of a unique value prospect you got going on right now?
So there's, yes and no. There's many companies that are beginning to list Canada's public stock exchanges that are blockchain related, both directly and indirectly. So they either own the currency or they own sort of like the underlying infrastructure that generates the currency. There's that aspect that is sort of quickly coming to public markets, and I don't see that trend reversing anytime soon. GMP estimates that there'll be over 50 public blockchain companies in Canada listed in 2018. Several happening every month, all with a different investment thesis and all with a different sort of strategy or view or value proposition to their investors. What I will say is that a cryptocurrency is going to continue to grow and thrive to trade as an asset class in public markets. The largest markets in the world are global public, and cryptocurrency markets are quickly becoming an emerging asset class. Many restrictions that preclude both retail investors and institutional investors to physically go and own the asset itself. Firstly, on the retail side, it's actually very, very challenging for a new user to onboard themselves, create an exchange account, an exchange, purchase the cryptocurrency, just take it offline and actually store it in a hardware wallet or a paper wallet, and actually having them have the comfort that it's actually secure, and sort of time commitment on behalf of the retail investor. On the institutional side, the lack of secure custodians in the global marketplace is something that, the trend that we see reversing slowly over time, but that just doesn't exist yet. So even if these institutional investors wanted to just buy the currency directly, they literally couldn't, because their investment mandate states they would need a custodian to take asset ownership for them, right? Thirdly, you have like many funds who sort of like mandated in their investment charter will state something along the lines of they can only invest in a company that's listed in North America on a specific exchange. More narrow in terms of what the investment criteria that they're allowed to actually deploy funds against. So in the future, we're going to see many of these types of vehicles begin to list on public markets, and a lot of additional investment into the blockchain ecosystem ensures that cryptocurrencies become the market cap becomes larger, it becomes more broadly held, and ideally, reducing volatility over time and promoting greater adoption.
Yeah, so interesting. How many Dash-related publicly traded companies do you know of right now, off the top of your head? And then to the next level, is Neptune Dash going to be the first, or just one of very few masternode, directly Dash masternode related publicly traded companies?
To our knowledge, we're the only Dash masternode, pure play public company in the world. Although I have to add the caveat that we're not public yet. a listing that we anticipate ideally being approved in the near future. But should we be approved by our stock exchange authority, will be the only sort of like pure play Dash Mash node company in the world. In response to your second question is, how many of these sort of public blockchain companies are there? I haven't counted an exact number, but I know sort of like the larger players in the space. So there's basically Grayscale down in the United States. They have the Bitcoin Trust, the Ethereum Trust, and the Zcash Trust. There's a few Bitcoin financial instruments that are listed in Sweden. Investors basically to have that type of exposure, although it's not really very liquid, and it's very, very hard for a normal just go and buy off that exchange. You actually really need a broker to be able to actually call Sweden and actually make. As you know, there's the CME Bitcoin futures that have recently sort of come to market that allow institutions to begin to trade Bitcoin price, but then they don't actually take ownership of the asset itself. Thereby, they're reducing their upside because they don't actually take ownership of any forks in the future related to any cryptocurrency. So there's those vehicles. And then there's a number of public mining vehicles that are beginning to be listed in Canada, mainly sort of high blockchain technologies, hash chain technologies, and a few others.
All right. Well, that concludes all the questions I had for you today. From what I understand, you have a conference to get back to. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm actually here in Miami at the Miami Bitcoin conference, and out and actually go sign up for the conference. And yeah, looking forward to it.
All right. Well, it's great. Well, thanks very much for sharing your time with us during this whole busy and chaotic week. Hope you have a good one.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much, Joel.
Yeah, no problem.
Bye.